she said, hey, it's gonna be to us.
Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call. Vote.
Sarah. Here. Dustin.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Amber. Here. Hello. Christina. Here. James.
Here.
All right. First item of business is to swear in a new board member. Mr. Grocott.
Yes, sir.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of school director in and for the district number R6, County of Christian, State of Missouri, to the best of your ability according to the law? So help you God.
I do.
Welcome to being a school
Thank
board
you.
member.
Thank you. Welcome.
You would like to sign your book?
Sure.
Thank you.
First time you've done it? Or have you before after the board? Yeah, first time. Thought a little different.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the agenda for the day.
Second. Second, Amber and Sarah.
Amber, Sarah, all in favor? Unanimously approved. First item on the agenda is a work session budget information. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. I enjoy these days because it's an opportunity to work and just to collaborate. Because I think sometimes this is where the meat of the work is for our students. And just as I start the meeting off with, remember we're doing for the students. Okay, that's our number one priority. To follow the mission and the vision, and that we make decisions for our students. So as we move on, this is going to be pretty fluid, and we're going to be bouncing back and forth between me and Dr. Chesig and Dr. Coachport. Feel free to ask any questions, but so what I'm going to do is we're coming back to talk about how to spend the bond money and financial forecasting. Remember, we have money left in the bond, and I know, Robert, as we go through this, we'll have conversations with those say that they remember even only because of school finance, there's only certain ways that you can spend money and what fund it comes out of. But that's what we're here today, because we need to have some guidance on that, as well as what we're going to be doing in the future for our district. Now, I sent each of you, we're going to start here, because I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Chesig to give us an update on some of these items before we start looking at the financial forecast. So if you remember back in October, I sent you, can you make that a little bit bigger? My eyes are not that great. I sent you each a copy of this. It was not a collaborative document. It was one that you have access to, okay? And so this morning, I bumped it back up to the top of your inbox so that you would know if you even filled it out or what you thought at that time frame.
Thank you for taking the time to do that.
Not a problem, not a problem. Because I know if I've slept overnight, I'm not gonna remember what I did. I had asked, just to get a consensus during that time frame, where do we think we need to spend the additional bond money? I put in your packet the bond language. Okay? I put in there, and this is the bond for the 2022 bond language, and it says, it will issue general obligation bonds in the amount of, it was at 19 million at that time, for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving, repairing, renovating, furnishing, and equipping school sites and facilities, including constructing storm shelters at the early childhood center, middle school, high school, and to the extent funds are available, completing capital improvements consistent with the district's long-range plan. Pretty broad, pretty broad. So we brought to you last time, some few ideas. Not only were they from new construction as well as maintenance items, as far as where we have to spend our capital out of, and if you did this, then we wouldn't spend capital money and free up some operating money. So this one is the master list. If you notice, it has changed a little bit than what's on yours. Not a lot, but it has changed. There was, if you scroll down, we added tennis courts resurfacing. So that's been added. Let's see.
That was there, it just changed.
The amount?
The dollar amount's
Okay, the dollar amount. At the bottom, when it says other large items, we added theatrical lighting retrofits. So it's basically the same. Some of the numbers have changed. For example, middle school chillers, they were there at 300, now they're at 150. So today, this meeting is coming back. We are fine tuning things. We're giving you a new financial forecast based on what the governor has stated and where we're at with our money. So last time it was just to set the stage. This time we really need to get into the nuts and the bolts of it. Okay? So I have on here, just as a reminder, this is what I sent you as potentially a way of spending the bond. You have on your computer what you had thought about at the time frame. Okay. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Curtis and let him give you some updates on some projects.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? I don't understand how do these ones that are on here get paid?
Those ones, as a district, what we recommend.
Oh, okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's our recommendation.
Yeah.
So a couple items of note, one is the tennis courts, and we kind of gave a brief statement at the last board meeting. So we had another company come, the Ozark company on the hill, 3rd Street, they just moved in. They came down, looked at them. They gave us a much more optimistic view of the condition of our courts. It actually said, as you go around, look at high school courts, these are actually in pretty good shape, which goes to say what other courts look like, I don't know. They reset 3 posts for us. We asked them to reset another 3. And meeting with the owner, looked at it, very nice lady, happy as most knowledge. She's been doing this for 31 years. She believes, she guarantees that they're gonna come in and they can resurface it and it will look as if it was new. And believing that if we stay on a maintenance schedule, that will give us another 15 to 20 years on that court.
What's the maintenance schedule?
So that would be a resurfacing at 5 to 7 years. So every 5 to 7 years, you're looking.
Same cost or?
Probably less because we're not setting poles. We have some along the edge where the chain link fence is, there's some damage that has been done. Possibly because they were set wrong to start with, but also possibly because we put the wind screens on and they catch the east-west winds and cause some damage. So probably not as high, but with inflation, probably just say close to the same.
No maintenance is needed for anything,
Yes, ma'am.
regular maintenance.
So that's a resurfacing every 5 to 7 years, and they believe that the condition is good, which was myself, Mark Fott, our grounds guy, Kevin Mays, that does all our facilities, was over there, and we really grilled her and questioned her because that's not close to what the last company said. And she said, look, she goes, I'm gonna put my guarantee on it. And actually, because we're in Ozark, we actually get a little discounted cost because she's able to send crews down and work on it when they're not going, when weather wouldn't allow them to go to another city or another town to work on it. So that's really good news. Also in that news, we pickleball craze across the world, and we're trying to, how do we, can we incorporate it? So I asked Yancey to reach out to Misha. He reached out to Misha, and we can now, as long as it's identifiable of what pickleball is and what tennis is we can still use those as Misha courts, old matches and meets, as well as those are our community courts. We have the lights and the community comes all the time to them. So we would then have pickleball courts placed on them. That was an additional $2,500. So the original bid was $7,200, and I mean, it was $74,500 is where we're at. But that does go that. And then we started working with the two coaches and giving them, and Nancy, they would have the opportunity of changing the colors. And one of the things that they recommended, or the bidder recommended, was something like the US Open. Just that's a nice color scheme, but of course our coaches would be able to do all that. So very positive, excited about that. And this is what I'm just being transparent and everything. This, whether we say go on this today, if you vote to do this today, we start. If we don't vote to do it today, we're going to do this during the summer. There will be an increase. I don't know what that is. The increase being right now, those crews are not going out. They can come down the hill and work and do some of the cleaning and refilling, digging out, refilling. If we wait until it's a summer project, our window gets tighter, and then we have to schedule those crews to be here on time, which is pulling wood and something else. So there's a potential that it will go up if we don't do it now.
Who's the first bid from?
PPE or PPC.
So if we said we don't want to do this at all, we want to save that money, what's the risk? What would happen?
So the risk is we have to resurface it. I mean, the risk is.
But if we said, hey, there's no money,
Yeah.
what would happen? I mean, what would happen to the tennis courts if we did that?
Oh, they would just fall apart. They would continue.
So we'd be back in the same place, or?
We would be in the same place. That's exactly what we're doing. So we reset those poles, and I think that was, and I think it was like $3,500 to reset those 3 poles. So we would have to reset those other 3 poles, and it's just because there's just a safety hazard there. But the water intrusion, and that's what, when she came out and looked at it, she was, what you're seeing is what every court sees. So you lay your asphalt, you core it, and you put concrete in where your posts go. And so you have water intrusion, and when you have that, that's why if you look at it, the cracks are between the nets. That's because that's where the water intrusion is. And then the other big cracks are where the divider chain link fence is, and that's where the posts are set in the water intrusion. So we have to stop that water intrusion, or it's just gonna keep getting worse and worse.
Is that going to mitigate the drainage issue as well?
So she looked at that for us. We need to come in, we have a couple swells that our guys can come in with a backhoe and help out with. But they're gonna come in along that edge and seal that edge along where the outside posts are too. So, all great questions, thank you.
And this is just out of regular budget money, or this is potentially for one?
This would be we have, from the district's perspective, we have that box checked as this would be something we would like to have done now. So we can start now and not wait until.
Right.
On the bond.
Bond.
That's what I would.
The other thing is, we always are looking ways. So we had the estimate of 300,000 up here for the chillers. We met with Train, who's our current estimator and energy savings company, and doing our evaluation, and they're our equipment provider. And they gave us an estimate. During those meetings, they talked about a renew program. And the equipment, this is good news. This is what the board has done in the past, and this is what leadership has done in the past, is in most cases, we buy good equipment. And because we've bought good equipment, we bought trained equipment, and it's the standard, and they're like, those are the models that we have at East and Middle School are the workhorses that they have had for decades. So they have a renew program that they'll come in, they'll keep the chassis, take everything out of the chassis, replace it with new, and certify it with a 5-year warranty. Which right now, if I buy a new train unit, I get a 1-year warranty. And you think, well, it's gonna last. Well, we just replaced on the OIC, we just spent $6,000 replacing a fan motor and $11,000 replacing a VAV drive. So
And how long have those been in operation?
3 years. 3 years. So, I mean, it's equipment, it's gonna fail. The fact that we're gonna get a 5-year warranty on it is incredible. And that's not just Ozark, that's Train's Renew program. So that's the 5-year warranty, but that's a 10 or 15-year extension on that piece of equipment. So that's where we went from replacing it at 329,000, this is east numbers, from 329,000 or 349, depending on what kind of compressors we put it in. We can get that done for about 150,000. So better warranty, keep the same the equipment, half the cost, and you're getting probable 2/3 life extension on it of what we're currently at. So our Mark Carter, our maintenance director, is excited about it. Our other guys are excited about it. It's good equipment, and the fact that that building was built in 1988, and we're talking about replacing the equipment, and we've got our money out of it, our life out of it. If we can get another 15 years out of that piece, then we feel like that's a good use of district funds. So we were able to come in and fine tune some of those numbers. And that's really it. The one that we're looking at is the North Cooling Tower. So we had an estimate from our engineers. Train looked at it, they had a different idea, and they gave us their number. And we went back, and now we have the two talking together to see if there's a good number. I still feel like that 250, Train was a little bit higher than that. They were 300 and something thousand to 479,000, depending on what. But when we're looking at what the engineers are recommending, we're more confident that we're gonna be around that $250,000 to $300,000. So we just spent the last couple months just really fine tuning these numbers, making sure that they're on and just ready to move ahead.
And again, these are bond dollars, so that leaves budget dollars for buses or something like that.
Yes, ma'am. Or salaries or, yeah.
Right.
We'll talk, so buses you have in your packet. So we had some numbers. There was some anecdotal information gave, and it's true anecdotal information. It's stories you hear as you talk to people. So I reached out to our surrounding schools, and we had them complete that form. They entered their numbers in, so you can see how we compare. We're not the oldest, we're not the newest. And that number on there has been modified a little bit because we just have our new lease buses in. So we have some 2025s in, which changes the average age of the fleet. Historically, buses are amazing. And this, I don't want to be political, but there used to be a grant for diesel buses. Now there's a grant for electric buses. Electric buses are of no value or very little value to us at this point. It would take a whole lot more grant money to get us up and running and able to maintain and charge those. So in taking the diesel grant money away, and that just in case you're a nerd like me, the settlement with Volkswagen for their emissions, that's where all that money came from back in the day. That those dollars are gone. So when I started in 2018, we were looking at about $94,000 for a brand new bus. With the focus to electric and switching plants over and focusing on that, as well as inflation, that same $94,000 bus is $150,000 today. No grant money. So we were getting we were buying 3, 4, 5 buses at $50,000. Now we're buying off-lease buses, and if you look at that sheet, you can see that about half the people are buy off-lease, or a little better than half, are buying off-lease, and others are buying new. So we're buying off-lease buses just under what a new bus was. So a 3-year-old bus, last year we bought 4 of them for $85,000. And it's 82, 85, something between those. So 85,000 each, yeah. So we have that rotation in mind, and by us doing something like this, that frees up money to go to salaries that we need them to go to, but then it also frees up the remaining capital funds to take care of buses. And as we look at it, look, we're not, as you can see on the sheet, we're not the newest, we're not the oldest. We definitely have room for improvement. And if we can keep that rotation going, if we just making a commitment to, do that $350,000 to get 4 off-lease buses a year, then that's gonna get us back to where we need to be. So it stops the bleeding. We're not replacing right away, but we're gonna stop the bleeding and start to recover.
So, Robert, is there 350 a year? Yeah,
This fiscal year, there's 330,000 budgeted.
well, but like for the next 5 years.
I have 330 right now, but, it can be bumped to 350.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
I guess it, so, says the average age is 9 years?
Yeah.
If my math is right, 22 buses or 66 buses, 3 a year, so it takes 22 years to get a new bus. So does that mean, is that how long we keep a bus, is 22 years?
We have, we just took out of service, I think the answer is yes. We maintain buses, I think we still have, and I can pull it up here in a minute. We just took off some 2002s.
So is that the expectation, keep it for 20 years?
Yeah, our expectation. And again, nerding out a little bit, 7.3 diesels were great. They lasted a long time. The frames would rot around them. Emissions change things, and that same platform, that 7.3 platform with emissions on it, it went to the max force, and that max force is a 75,000 mile motor and a rebuild. And that's a $30,000 to $40,000 rebuild. And that's it. That's not Ozark. There's actually a class action lawsuit going because it's that bad. So we were able to get those. We're still getting those, but there is a chunk of a $30,000 rebuild for about a 5-year generation of buses. So new buses with the Cummins in them, that's what we switched to. They're running great. They're gonna last forever.
How many of those new buses did you say there were 5?
No, there was about there was about a 5-year span of those max forces. So we rebuilt 2 of them this year. So we just know that 75,000 miles, they're gonna be sent off, so.
I was just thinking about the average age in years, talking about nerding out.
Yeah.
I thought, let's take off the new ones, take them out of the average,
Yeah.
because that's gonna really narrow it down. And maybe I miscalculated, but if you take the new ones out, then the average age is more like 11.6, maybe 11.4.
Oh, the 10.5, I think there's 2 numbers on your page, there's a 10.5 and a 9.8.
9.8, I read that, it's the average without Ozark.
I was
Okay,
looking at,
sorry.
the average,
Yeah.
I was looking at
Yeah, so-
Ozark's average
So
age is
we were not quite 11.
Right.
Before we added those 3 buses, we were not quite 11.
Oh, there were only 3. That's what I was trying to figure out. If I took out those 3, what would the average age be without
Yeah,
those 3?
it was
And I
just-
took out 5, so yeah, it would have been 11.2 or something
Yeah.
like that.
All of our buses in operation, like 66.
Right now, we have one that's getting an in-frame done. We have one with a transmission down. And then we have some that are just going off to the shop. So not all of them are running, but they're all either in the shop or in our shop getting repaired. So Nixon doesn't transport every student.
That's a big difference.
How many are operational per day?
We're usually down 3 or 4. So 59, 60. Yeah. Depends on, winter's worse, as you get into the year, more problems, but we start the year.
Does it help any having the early out on Fridays? Does it help the bus schedule any or not really?
No, that doesn't really.
Because everybody's out.
See.
I say that Tiger Paw has already got an adjustment on Friday, so they never changed that. So it's gonna be the same. If we would've went to full staff on Fridays, at Tiger Paw and then had to cut back down, it would've cost us, but there's no difference. Still same number of kids.
Right, I didn't know if anybody got out early or how that,
Yeah, no,
there
it
was a cost to do double duty, but
doesn't.
I guess along the same lines, Christine was talking about the average age, and are there years where you need, hey, now this year we need 4 or 5? That would be good to know, hey, all these are 15 years, a bunch of them are 3 or 4,
Yeah.
That would be good to know that,
So,
can we afford to do 3 per year is a question.
so ideally, that would
Or do you
be
need to allocate more?
3 to 4 per year is what we purchased at. So so we should be replacing 3 to 4 per year. And then we have some buses that, 27, for example, 27, I think is our oldest bus, and that might be a 2002 still. It runs solid as can be. But a 2008, we make out profitably. So it's not always the same. We're not replacing the ones we bought in 2002 in 2024.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Hey, Curtis, what would be, and I realize you may not know the exact number on this, and even if you don't stat in the dark, if we're at 66, we're next to neighborhood 48, if we weren't to bus everybody as they do, and we were in relatively the same amount of buses, drivers wise, that's more drivers, that's more buses, that's more fuel, that's a significant, give me I won't hold you to this.
Okay.
But is it, we save 20,000 or we save 2 million? Give me an annual budget that we save, or we spend versus what's going on to the west.
Okay, let me walk that through with you so I can give you a good number.
Yeah.
Okay, so South Elementary, we could take out the routes behind Walgreens. We could take out the routes all the way to here, which would be 2 to 3. This elementary only. We could take out 2 behind. So we could save 4 or 5 there. We could save east, kind of the same thing. You could save all the way over to the river, and then out towards to the edge of town, to the edge of our district. Again, another 4 or 5.
are you thinking 2 miles or 3 miles or something?
I'm going with about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Yeah. If you do that north, the people behind north is where we would save. They're already walking. So there's not, that bus, we consolidated that route this year because we were actually, I think it was 4 or 6 kids we were busing on the elementary. Everybody else is walking. West, we're not gonna really save anything there. And it's not only the mileage, but it's is there a safe way to get to school?
Right.
So we could potentially save 10 elementary routes, which doesn't really help on buses because now it would depend on what we do at secondary. If we go to secondary and say, okay, if you're this close to an attendance center, then your job is to get to the attendance center. So if you live out on J Highway, your job is to get to East. We're gonna run a shuttle bus from East to the junior high to the high school. If we did something like that, which some districts do, then you end up getting hopefully close to that 10. So you could save 10 buses and 10 drivers. So,
And our neighbor does something similar to that.
so then now you're down to that where Nix is at 48, that we're probably getting into that 50 bus range.
We had a giant first station.
If we threw a number at that annual savings, bus savings, because we're talking 3 buses a year, what would that quantify out as a?
Well, that would, so right away we could, if you pulled the Band-Aid off for next year, you could say, well, we don't have to do $340,000.
Yeah.
We could just take off the oldest 3 buses. The oldest 3 buses, we could get 3 or 4 years down the road just through attrition, just like we do with teachers, right?
Right.
If we lose money on teachers, we're not gonna go out and fire them, we're gonna do it through reduction, through attrition, right?
$500,000.
Yeah, well,
By the time you do
300,000,
the buses and the employees,
10
and the
drivers,
maintenance and the fuel,
Yeah, you're talking fuel, you're talking not having to purchase any buses. Something to remember though, from state funding standpoint, we already don't get reimbursed for any student that lives within a mile.
Yeah.
But any student who lives a mile or outside, you do get reimbursed at a certain percentage. So just keep that in mind if you are thinking about looking at a perimeter, that mile number.
my point to it, not necessarily to go, hey, you guys are on your own.
Yeah.
But our tax rate is 4.14, theirs is 4.56.
Yes.
We hear a lot of people squawking about the schools just burning money, but the reality is, we're doing more in Ozark with less money.
and that's not
And
only,
people need to know that, so they need to be able to go, oh, they just hear, because if you go, hey, I'm paying taxes, it's a big chunk every year. But if they understand what it is that's actually going on, that we're doing here truly with less, and that's just, to me, that's one item of many that is kind of proof in the pudding.
and
But I needed a number to.
3 to 500,000.
And Robert, can you do some like number magic and figure that out for real?
I can get more something specific. It would be based on where Curtis draws that line and says we're picking you up or not, or deciding on, even though this is a half mile from school, this area is so dangerous, we gotta pick you up, so.
Yeah, we don't want to have.
We don't want to think collectively, I don't speak for everybody, I don't think anybody wants to get rid of the routes. To me, it's just here's what we continue to commit to doing.
Well, it's not only in that, I mean, if you look at the supports we have in learning, with our coaches, our interventionists, I mean, we do more on less across the board.
Yes, and that's my point, is I think the public is blissfully unaware of some of that, and there's a lot of people that say, we're at 4.14, but we need to go to 3%. We need to lower the tax, right? And the reality is, we can't, right? We're already doing more with less, but they need to know exactly what those things are. So it's kudos to everybody who's committed to doing those things. Sometimes we have to let people know that that's actually going on. That makes sense?
It does, it makes a lot of sense.
If we are gonna run those numbers, could you also tell us how many kids that's gonna end up?
Absolutely. I would agree with Curtis' assessment. It's gonna be somewhere between 300 and 500, and then finding specifics to get a finite number.
Are we looking how many kids it affects, it's like, is it worth it?
And for some elementary, we have to build more infrastructure, the city would have to build more infrastructure to make it safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more than just.
Well, it's easy to look at the numbers, at least we have the numbers to see, and then obviously we don't want safety, but.
Yeah, we don't, I mean, I don't like the idea. I mean, miles like big.
That's
For
a little
kids that
small,
don't
but-
have parents.
Walk up, go play.
It just felt.
One shoot.
So on that,
What's happened when they gave you one?
that note of a mile being a lot, and some of our country, rural kids, like, they could walk a half mile to the bus stop
Currently,
currently.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I get
they
that,
do.
but
Yeah.
you were used to that. It's, any changes are good.
we're taking something away. We would be taking
And
something
there
away.
might be other places where we could,
And
where we can have that much savings and it'd be a lot less people.
yeah, that's why we gotta look at how many it affects.
That's also a good possible point, a good number of benefits, say, hey, here's what we're getting for less, you're getting more for less here.
Well, I think people might.
No, we don't have to do it. We don't have to do it for real. We can say, hey, here's what you're getting.
We're able to bus every kid in the district.
But I see what you
And
mean.
don't people don't know that.
Yeah, because they don't, that's about educating, I agree.
And then the only other thing I have on there is that literally is the scoreboard, and we have one, when we put in the scoreboard in the new gym, the video board, we had one company that we already doing business with said, well, hey, what about out there on this football field? I said, well, just, you can send you a bid. So I do have one bid on that, and I just do, it is the most expensive company in the past, and historically, the most expensive. And that a bid with not going through and reducing anything and taking out some video packages is $315,000. So that $300,000 bid is real close to what it would cost to redo the stadium. So
Is that, I think this says high school video board, that's
Yeah.
the school board.
yes, ma'am.
Do a lot of people think that was is there a reason that's a priority over? I don't know.
So
Playgrounds that, where kids
Well-
actually develop things with their gross motor skills.
So ideally, I wish we had $10 million and we just take care of playgrounds. We'll impact 3,000 kids by no playgrounds. That's huge. There's nobody that wants to do that more than me. The reason that's on there over playgrounds is we have to free up salary money because we're at 50 cents, 40 cents less than our surrounding and everybody else. So we have to free up salary money to keep paying a competitive salary. The best way to do that, probably the only, I'll let Robert say the only, besides raising taxes, but is to free up capital money. And that video board, we were the first. Branson may have been the year right after us, but we were the first to put that in. And with any technology, there's always a reoccurring cost to repair it or replace it. And it has been repaired. And you can't hardly see it from the field because it's faded so much. The LEDs are no longer bumped as bright as they should be. It has to be replaced. So that would either come out of local money or it could come out of bond money. Or we just turn off the other option is we turn off the video portion and we run the scoreboard below. So there's always that option.
Have you looked at corporate sponsors?
So we do use corporate sponsors for that. That does bring in, so it's like the turf, okay? And there's a way that we did that in the past. Athletics is very expensive, okay? So in the middle of trying to get roofs redone, the turf came due. And we had to repair the turf because we were getting close, replace the turf because we were getting close to a concussion problem. We do the testing and you have to, so we were still passing, but we were gonna get close to that failure point, just based on longevity of compaction and the wearing down of the turf.
It's about every 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
10, we hope for 15.
Right.
10 is the lowest, we got to 12. So we
We've been on traffic and we have pretty good traffic. So.
yes. And soccer is, I mean, and we do a lot anyways, between the combined, it's a lot. So, we sold advertisement on there. And just with that advertisement, went to Fund 4. So it went to offset other projects. So we took money away from, say, putting a chiller in to returf. So we returf. As that money comes in, then we use that money to pay off some other projects. To do other projects. So we could put the video board in, but I can't say nobody. Out of selling turf, ads on the turf field, one of them paid up front. Everyone else makes annual payments on it. So it's not like I can offset the cost of it by selling $300,000 in advertising. I can sell $300,000 in advertising, but I'm gonna get 50 this year, 50 next year, for the next 6 years, I'm gonna get
So you
$50,000.
can get it, but it doesn't negate the fact that we.
Are we doing it though? Are we, but to his question, are we doing that?
Yeah, so it used to be, we have Coach, who's also Cordell.
We are having those conversations.
So even 300 isn't really, even if you get it over 5 years, it's still, it's anyway good. That's right.
That type of expense can be amortized for 20 years, and it boils down to $1,250 a month for a business to donate that to the school, put their sign on the side of the scoreboard that says, whatever business it is, they have a big sign saying, this is our scoreboard. And for them to have an expense of $1,250 a month, they can, accounting wise, amortize that expense over a 20-year time period. And it would be a huge selling point to say, hey, this would be your scoreboard for the next 20 years. And you could get all your money up front. and just, it's there.
But if we could sell it up front, then we could pay that. Just historically speaking, we've not been able to get that kind of upfront money.
We have also, have asked a specific sponsor that used to do that a lot, and they have told us that they're out of that game of either paying for or sponsoring scoreboards. We really thought we could get it that way. But it has, honestly, we've had numerous conversations about where can we go to get additional funding for this, but we haven't pulled the trigger yet because of everything else. And to say that this is the goal when we may need it somewhere else. I mean, we've had numerous conversations on how to make this happen.
Well, this is an easier thing to sell, that type of sponsorship for, than say bathrooms.
Yeah.
You don't want to necessarily have your
Or-
name because it's name on it.
Boilers at East, which are the same price. I'd rather do that.
But you're not gonna have a corporate
And
sponsor.
nobody's gonna sponsor that.
Right.
But they're sponsor this, I mean, yeah, how's it going now? Can we, email me?
I'm just looking at
I
the,
mean, 300 people to get $1,000, man.
I mean, if we pay for it up front, because that's the problem, we're gonna have to pay for it up front. You know, but I don't know that there's anyone that's gonna write us a big check for that.
How we ask.
but Mark was just saying to do it, right? It's
Businesses.
just amortizing.
Certain businesses, they're already with the turf, they're already paying $50,000 a year.
Right.
So, but we have not gone out and asked. We'd have to have a campaign for it.
I
We've
mean,
not
local,
done that.
local businesses, you get the coffee place is $500, the other place is $1,000. I mean, and hey, we're gonna run your ads for the next 25 years. I don't know.
Have Mark help you word what you asked, because he describes it in a way that makes it sound like they could use it all up front, just like. Sure.
If we're looking at things that, I don't disagree, when we put that in, we had money, right? I mean, you look on the side of that board, those sponsors have been there, we repainted those signs multiple times because they sponsored that board. That's how we put it in originally, but it wasn't upfront, again, it wasn't upfront. But if we can find a way to do the upfront, I'm all, we can.
That's the problem, is the upfront money.
What do you guys think could be the annual return on this? Because I mean, if we think we can pay for it now, and I think we could probably generate 50 a year or whatever, 100 a year. Is that, you guys,
We usually have
you have any idea?
the sponsor for the board itself, and then you can still sell advertising on top of that.
Yeah.
That could be a return on.
So the way that so right now, the revenue generated, so we have a class that does that. And the revenue that's generated from those ads goes to that class. At least it is, it's still great. So that's the FBLA. So when they go to nationals, some of that money to pay for that is coming, and other things for FBLA is coming out of that money. So there would be a change in philosophy, because we're already doing that, so it would take from somewhere else.
But if we were to do, I mean, I can't stress enough that the conversation we're having here, we've had numerous times already on how would we want to go about this, developing a sponsor package. What would be the price of this? How do we go out and market it? It goes back to the upfront. If we knew that, yes, we're doing this, but I need to find a way to pay for it and reimburse the school for this, we'll make it happen, and we will get it figured out.
So is that the idea that we fund it now and then get a big sponsor and then pay for ads? Is that?
If we want the scoreboard now, if we want to say we're gonna have a 2-year campaign to get the scoreboard, then we would go out and try to market and get the money to put the scoreboard in. But if we want the scoreboard now, then we would have to pay for it up front and get the money over the
I
next
think
few
it's
years.
better to have a campaign, you get the scoreboard in a little bit, because like East Boilers, maybe there's a reason why those weren't selected, but I think that's kind of a key deal. Like, affects your learning.
Well, no,
all kinds of stuff.
But there are reasons. I mean, we have sat down as a group, and these are the things, and Curtis can talk about these, such as the East Boilers.
I think
That's in a good
higher
state.
priority than.
So that's in a good state right now. It's still going to get us quite a few years of life out of it.
So in your folders, you have this item. If you go to page 10, So we have had, our energy savings company go through, and when I say an audit, they have looked at they have tested and analyzed every damper, every motor, uh, every valve throughout the district of what is good and what's not. So they gave us back this summary of where our equipment is. And East Elementary, the chiller is at replace, and that's on the list. And we work on that a lot, to keep it running. The boiler, is maintained and replaced. And that is, they've evaluated them, they've looked at them. The efficiency rating on them is still good enough that we don't need to, and we're not spending money to repair them. We turn them on in the fall, they fire up, they run all winter, we turn them off in the spring. So it's on there because I want a plan, and so not this year, not next year, but 5 years down the road, we may need to replace it. It is,
So it's not like it's a need right now, it's on the list because.
It's like a need for the next 3 years.
yeah, if we're to project out 5 years, at the later half of that 5 years, we're gonna have to replace that.
So for the rest of these, are you saying we have to replace these now, is that, or?
Yeah. So if we look at East, like I said, East is the worst. East is, and our guys are great. We have Cody and Mitch, our two HVAC guys. They can get anything running, but keeping it running is the challenge. So, and when Train evaluated it, they said that's a replace, and that's absolutely, we agree with that. And then if you go to the, page 9, you'll see that likewise, the chiller, and they have 2 on there. We're only running 1 chiller right now. The other ones are not, we haven't used for a while. So that would just be the 1 chiller to replace. So, and that would be,
So
it built, read the room, do in place.
this is great.
Thank
In fact, I have not looked at it because I'm just, but is anything that's hot red replace on this list?
So,
Or maybe I should say, is there anything that's hot red replace that's not on this list? That's what
no, so if you were to look at junior high, there's 53 split systems. And so those are package units that are $2,000 to $4,000 a piece. So if one of those goes bad, we buy it, and actually we move them from the ground to the roof, we just replace them. So that's a ongoing, there's no sense in replacing those. It's like your home, it's exactly the same as your home air conditioning condenser outside. So if you think it's gonna go bad, you're not gonna replace it until it goes bad, and you just have money sitting there ready to go. So that's what that is. The domestic water heaters, those are small budget items that we need to maintain. The only difference there is technically, because of the BTUs that it takes to heat the water, they're considered boilers. So that's why Train evaluated and they're on here. But just imagine your hot water tank, but 3 times the size.
But those are regular budget things.
Yes, those are regular budget things. And then on the back, you have East, which we're talking about, and then we have another, South has a water heater. So the replace items are either, we're gonna do it as they go bad, and we've budgeted for it, in our general operating, and that's really in our supply lines.
Okay.
And everything that, like when this goes bad, like one of those boilers goes bad, and I say boilers, hot water heaters is considered a boiler based on the BTUs. We go to Springfield, they're in warehouse, we pick them up, we bring them down here, we install them. And then we just have to, because they are boilers, they're hot water tanks. The government says they're boilers because they create so many BTUs. We have to have them inspected. So we hook them up, we have an inspector come and inspect them, we fire them up, and we're good to go. So, and that's all in-house work generally, and definitely less than 20 on the hot water heaters. They were about 12 to 15,000, And then the package units are 4,000 on the high unit.
I'm just checking to make sure, are there building things that impact students being able to learn all of the students be able to learn? That we need to prioritize before we prioritize the school, board, even though that's important. That we could campaign for a couple of years and get ready for that. Are there?
The roof, the roof
Yeah.
at the high school, that is,
And we did that, right?
that's out. They were doing field work again yesterday. So after that board meeting, actually that night, I called, the next day I called, and so they are out. They're doing all the field work, they're writing up all the specs, they're doing the evaluation. They also reached out, and like I said, our worry was getting qualified bidders to block it out. So they've contacted many, they being our architect firm has contacted multiple roofers that we would expect to bid this and tell them that the bid is coming. Again, started late in this process, so we're hopeful that we will have a March, at the March board meeting, that would be the best bid, the best chance, but we're really hopeful we may by the March bid for.
So, okay.
This one, we're going back and forth there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
well, I need, as you are thinking of all of this, I need to have Robert start talking through the forecast, and then we'll come back to make some decisions.
This one, it's not a question, it's just, like, this thing is kind of what I was looking for before. Can you have it in maybe one spreadsheet for the future, so we can see, hey,
Yes.
these are red, these are, I mean, it's a good question.
I took it out of one spreadsheet, put it on here, so I can easily, yeah.
That way we can see, hey, what's
I like
red.
both ways.
I just want to see what's red and eliminate those.
Okay, yes, I can do that.
But this, I thought we were talking about asking extra bond money, right? That doesn't have to do with the
Oh,
forecast.
it does.
It kind of all goes.
Yeah, it goes all together, because if you choose not to put, if you choose to, what you choose, if you say it still goes to the capital account, it affects our forecast, it affects where our bond, what we transfer money. But if all this comes out of bond, it frees up more money in operating,
Right,
we don't transfer it.
I understand that. That's why I was talking about, we should probably
So
our bond things.
I've got a question, and maybe I'm the one who's kind of like you'll hear so. Through conversations that I've had, you know, when it comes to bond money and things like that, obviously this is a very broad statement that's in here. It gives you a lot of room to do different things, but the expectation that I think I get from people I talk to is generally on the bond money is improvements and additional things, as opposed to maintenance. I feel like that needs to be and should have been being done all along, not passing bond money to replace chillers that should be part of their normal maintenance bucket, if that's the way you want to put it. I understand this is the situation we're in now, where we have to deal with it. However, I don't want to be in this situation again. I want, this is my own opinion, these things need to come out of general maintenance, general fund. And when we have bond money, we do things that improve our school and that we're paying for over time, not repair and maintain our school.
Quite a few
And that's, to your point, like it wasn't checked on, I didn't check it because I don't think bond money should, although we can, I felt like I had questions.
On the
to go.
roofs.
Yeah, well, now even on the chillers and things like that, they 100% need done. I'm at 100, but to me, that money should be coming out of ideally, we have enough money to do those things. And if we don't, we don't, but people also need to know that they're not passing bond money and go, hey, we're putting a roof on.
So I'd like to use some reassurance.
Yeah.
So in 2018, and I can't speak to why anybody else spent money prior to me, but I can tell you when I came in, North Elementary roof was a disaster. Bad. It was, and that was bad. Middle school, east, high school, and south. So in the last 6 years, we've replaced 4, and of course, and one middle school was over 2 years, plus we did the OIC. I don't disagree with you more, or, sorry, I can't agree with you more. I can't agree with you more. It doesn't have to be. High school may be the only one just because it's $2 million. I get it. We replaced north, middle school, and east with local money. We just got out of cycling, and it was not a priority. And again, I'm not judging. We grew from '88 till now at an incredible rate. How we spent money was just to stay alive. Yeah. I feel, and this is one of those, as I walk out the door, I can say the roofs at Ozark School District are in great shape, and we have a replacement cycle. The chillers and HVAC are in great shape, and we have a replacement cycle. So we can do exactly what you're saying. We have, in the past, on that $2 million, we did pass a bond, I think it was 2011, to redo the junior high. Specifically went to the people and said, we are going to replace the roof junior high, I think it's in the junior high. And they voted for it, but that was, we specifically went to. And I think you're right, if we do the high school again, which would be $3 million by the time it comes to again, if not 4, and this building as well, we need to make sure that that's on the ballot, which I agree with you. But just reassurance, there is a plan. We should not be there in the future.
I totally agree with what you're saying, is about it needs to be budgeted. I want to say one more thing. I agree it needs to be budgeted as part of the budget, but we are playing catch up. And I think people are gonna say, what? We're building something new, when we have buildings that leak, when we have boilers that don't work, when we have, so I think it is.
No, I think they don't realize that those things have not been taken care of. There's an assumption that they are, if they know,
Right.
there's a lot of misinformation out there that thinks they're being done one way when they're being done another.
Right.
I think it is something that we need to make them aware of. Hey, we would love to do X, Y, or Z, which was the intention, but these are critical points that we have to take care
Well,
of.
this one thing is to repair.
It does, but I think that was included, but from the vast majority of people that I've spoken to over time, I think their intention or their understanding was more so that it was going to future projects, not to repair prior projects.
As long as the concept of refinancing your credit cards onto your mortgage and financing it over 20 or 30 years, you don't do that because it's not a smart way to do it, to spend money that you should be spending on maintenance and keeping up with every year, and financing that over a long period of time because you're not paying an asset. You're just spending money. It's increasing the cost of that one small project a lot to finance it that way.
If I can mention something real quick. One reason we have the $5 million is I feel like Curtis, actually Snyder, and our construction management team did a great job, facilitating the project and finding ways they can save. I know Melissa does a tremendous job making sure we're getting charged. She's going through all those charges and making sure. So to have that $5 million is a huge benefit. Something I wanted to mention is, I think when we talk about HVAC units, there is a difference between repairing some HVAC units and then buying new. It is very common for districts to use bonding money to buy new because the amortization of that unit should last 15 or 20 years. Mr. Jennings, I know you're saying like using repairs, that is just temporary and short term. That's why we talked about buses not wanting to use bond money because the bus lasts 8 to 10, 12 years, but you're paying over 20 years. So not smart, but I do want to mention that, hey, we're so excited that we have this $5 million. And if we can use this money to buy those new units that we had planned in Fund 4, we don't have a levy in Fund 4. So the only way for us to get money in Fund 4 is to use some of our classroom trust money or minimum surtax or transfer. And so when we do that, we're taking money out of Fund 1 too. So if we can use this bond savings we've been so blessed to have to free up some of those Fund 4 costs, that'll help us in our operations. And so I know it's not, I know you would want to, ideally on the ballot language, you would want to say, we are replacing these HVAC units this school and make it very clear. But a lot of times you don't know what you'll have left over in savings. And if you can use that to kind of help your operations, it is beneficial. But I understand what you guys are saying as far as, you know, the ballot language and what we do with this extra statement, so.
And whatever the decisions are here, the decisions that have been made in the past, that will be made now, will be made in the future, is we can do anything, we just can't do everything. And so then decisions have to be made, and that's what we're looking for. And just as, I think what we're trying to say is that if it frees up some of our capital to be able to have, not transfer as much, and it allows it to stay in Fund 1 and Fund 2, that's going to help us. It will help us, especially because we know that we are 80% at least with salaries, not just teachers, but salaries across the board. We are in a people business. And as those increase and our revenue does not, we've got to find ways to work within the budget and to be able to still support our teachers.
And the people who want to see new things, we've got some new things, right? Better things along and in, at the, you know, we've got an indoor practice, I mean, we have lots of.
We have wonderful facilities.
Yeah.
Wonderful facilities, we do. You know, I would like to see after, when we're talking about this, and if we decide to have, because we're gonna give you some scenarios, if we decide to move some money from debt to operating, that will help. If we ask the patrons for a tax levy, that will help. And then at what point, and I already know this is a discussion for today, but we're running out of time, is what point do you say, do we need to go out for a bond for just playgrounds? Because we will not be able to do all the maintenance on the buildings that you need to do, plus put in playgrounds, plus put in this, plus put in that, on the budget we have. So I think those are just all big items that we have to be prepared for and think about. Okay. And you know, after you look at the forecast, and I understand that we just need to make some decisions on the bond. You may say baseball is not what you want, and we want to put one playground in somewhere that's not with Tiger Ball. So those can be decisions that you can make today, but if you don't mind, I want to go ahead and have Robert, let's talk about our forecast a little bit. One of the things he's going to tell you, and I'm going to reiterate, I asked him for a 5-year plan. With how financing is through the state, with everything that goes on, don't look at year 5 and 4 and totally freak out. Don't say, this is it.
You should have told me that.
Don't look at that. There's still a lot of play there. Things could happen, things could change. I like looking at worst case scenarios. So, and then we can always say we did better, but I like looking at the worst case scenario. So don't get hung up on that last column. Let's just really focus on the next 3 years is what I would say, the next 3 years. But, all right, how about we take a 5-minute bathroom break?
Don't pass these out.
Okay, 5-minute bathroom break while she's doing that.
So if we want to run different scenarios, it's not printed out, we certainly can. Last couple of weeks, got a couple punches in the gut as far as our revenue and expenses for future years. And the first one started with the governor's State of the State address that talked about his funding, and he stated that he would not be able to would recommend not being able to get the SAT to 7145 like was promised in Senate Bill SB 727. And so that doesn't mean that that's in cement, it's set in stone. The legislative session is going right now, and the legislators will decide what the state budget is, but that is the governor's recommendation. So called a couple people down in Jeff City, one being the MSBA finance director, Linda Quinley, also Jason Hoffman, kind of talked through this and where you've seen things going. And they said I would plan on a state adequacy target of 767.60. And so you can see that this budget uses that state adequacy target of 67.60 for how we're going to receive our state funding. When we got together a couple months ago, I was using 71.45 for next fiscal year because that's what Senate Bill 727 said. So that's about a cost of 1.8 million that we won't receive in state revenues based on that SAT change. So big number. The second thing we got news about was our insurance. So we have a 120% usage of our health insurance, meaning, for example, if we spend $8 million on health insurance, basically our claims were $9,600,000. So 20% of what we paid in is what our health insurance is running right now. So with that, we are not getting any bids from any other providers besides Cox to take over our plan because it's too high a risk. We're way above. So Cox did come back and said that we did not go out to market, that they would guarantee a 7.5% increase in insurance over the next 18 months to 2 years with that. So we can kind of choose whether it's 18 or 2 years. And so that is also baked into this scenario here is that 7.5 increase over the next 2 years for our insurance. Some other assumptions, just to remind you, in reassessment years, I have 6%, and non-reassessment years, I have 3.5, just based on the history of Christian County where we've been. So I'm using those because our local dollars is our biggest funding source that we have for the district. So that's also an important place. So when we plug those numbers in, you can see where we are as far as our spending goes and then our reserve ratio. So this line right here is our funds 1 and 2, and if we are spending in the negative or if we are above in the positive for the year. And you can see we have that 1.8 million just pretty much turned every year to the red going forward. And so you can see how that kind of plays out. So, yes, if you look at the last column, I know it shows that low, but I kind of like to look at FY28 and see where we're at. So you can see that we're at 12% over time. If we just basically continue with standard operating procedures, meaning we don't try to make any type of adjustments with a transfer from debt service, a levy increase, changing our benefits for insurance and things like that, and kind of doing it each week. So that's just, hey, we got the bad news, how's it reflected? So that is your first page that you have right here.
Also talk about enrollment and about salaries.
Oh, yes, thank you. So on your enrollment numbers, our enrollment is projected to be very flat over the next 5 years. And so in the past, 2000 to 2010, and some of those times, Ozark was gaining hundreds of kids at a time. And so when you gain that enrollment, you're getting higher payments from the state. And so we're seeing our payments from the state flatten off because our enrollment is not growing.
And this year we lost 100 students.
Right.
So that affects the amount of that budget money that's lost.
From the younger grades, right?
The majority of the community grades this.
How much less do you get per 100?
Do what?
How much less do you get per 100 students?
So per student, we get paid about $5,332. And the reason that is because you're like, well, Robert, you just told me the SAT was 6760. Well, part of the formula is deducting your local effort. And so the state has a formula for what your local effort is, and they have the SAT, they reduce your local effort, they have a dollar value modifier in there. It's this very complex formula, and then they spit out your number, what you paid for WADA or EA. So it affects about $5,300 a student, every student you lose.
Not going for 100.
Right, so that was $500,000. If we would have just stayed flat this year instead of lost 100 students, that's $500,000 reduced from the state that we got paid.
Plus the 1.8.
Yeah, the 1.8 is because we thought we were going to go up in SAT next year. It's going to stay flat. So the state isn't reducing what they're paying. They are not increasing what was promised. So I know that's maybe a play on words, but they promised 7145 with SB 727. And when I say state, I mean the legislature passed that, not the governor didn't pass that. The legislature passed that. And then as the governor's coming in, he's recommending we need to keep it flat. We're not seeing the revenues come in to support that higher level. We want to keep that flat at 6760. But all the district anticipated that jump. Why wouldn't they?
The salaries.
So the first thing we want to look at is what can we do to make adjustments to make sure that we're not on this downward trend that you see here. The first one was to do some adjustments with our insurance. And so that is the second page that you have in your documents. And basically what that insurance adjustment is our deductibles are low compared to our other districts, meaning what's your out-of-pocket max and what you pay for deductible. And so if we're able to tweak those deductibles and, made some increases to them, which would put a little more responsibility on the employee. We could lower the cost of that insurance. And so I am not the person that deals directly with that, Dr. Link does with BPJ. He kind of works through that, and he's working through that process right now to see what that'd be. But if we could do that alone and just kind of keep our insurance costs flat for the next 2 years by adjusting some deductibles and kind of looking at the plans without having that 7.5 increase, you can see that that improved our situation here. And so that's one of the things we're looking at.
Do we know what's the cause? Are we having heart attacks? Are we having babies? Are we?
So they won't disclose that information for HIPAA, but they will tell us how many employees, well, Philip knows it, I know.
Philip does, we know,
Yeah,
we know that cancers.
Yeah.
Cancers, that's a big one.
I don't want to know specifics.
No, but those-
that's,
Yeah, there's those big, there's 54, 60 employees that make up, with their claims, that make up over half of our claims. And so, and that's what insurance, and when I say that, I don't want anyone to think that I'm against that, because that's what insurance is there for.
yeah,
That is what it is there for,
I was thinking along the lines of, well, is there something we can do that would be?
health and wellness,
Health and wellness, that kind of thing.
because of big things that should come down the pipe. You can't do it anymore.
And that does include retirees
Yes.
that choose to keep our insurance.
right. One thing we could do is right now, if you do a health risk assessment, you get a free leave day. And so instead of making it optional to give you a free leave day, there's many districts that require a health risk assessment, or you have to pay a higher price for your insurance. It's like usually $50. And so there are some things that we can do there to help. And I'm sure BPJ will do some of those recommendations to Phil on what we can do.
Who's our rep at BPJ?
Oh, man. I'm trying to remember his name.
Mike Scott
Yeah,
and Stan Robinson.
yeah, Stan. So,
I think Stan said, students had gone through Ozark.
Is that right, that saves about 900,000?
yeah. So,
And what's the increase deductible?
so right now they're playing with numbers. So something they've looked at is instead of $1,500 deductible, it'd be $3,000 deductible. And instead of a $6,000 out of max, it'd be an $8,000 out of max. And they ran the numbers and they said the only people that hit between $6,000 and $8,000 was 5% of our population. So changing that out of max between those two numbers only affected that 5%. But what we would do is we would offer the same plan that we have right now at the $1,500 and $3,000, but it would just be a buyout. The employer would have to pay about $50 or $60 to get that buyout. So it's not they still couldn't get it, but the board provided plan would have some deductibles that went a little higher, just try to keep our costs flat.
That sounds like a good idea.
What's that?
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and it's something that's typically done is you've seen health insurance costs outpace inflation.
We've always had just one insurance plan basically, and this will give choices, but, and I hate that to some, if this is the route after we get all of our information back in, if this is the route we need to go, there still will be angst because I had a $1,500 deductible, now I have a $3,000 deductible.
But they'll have the option.
But they'll have the option to buy it, yes.
Which will be less than.
How does it compare to Nixon and some other places?
So Nixon only provides about 540 or 550 board-provided health insurance. We provide 668 today. So another thing that you were talking about earlier, Dustin, we provide $100 more a month towards our employees' health insurance than Nixon does.
Can you give me those two numbers one more time?
They're around 550. We're at 668. I know ours exact. I know Nixon's right around 550.
Springfield's at 500 also, okay, go do a little analysis for you.
And if you're keeping track at home, the adjustments that I've made on these in the upper right-hand corner, you'll be able to see, okay, if it's highlighted, that was the adjustment with this group of data as you're flipping through. Just to kind of,
After the 2 years, the 7.5% is supposed to stick.
6 is just an estimate. So that 6% is totally an estimate that we came up with of what we thought insurance would cost going forward after that.
6 or 6.5?
What's that?
6.5?
Just, I put 6. That is just an estimate. We don't know. Let's say we had a great run with our loss ratio and we got down to like 82%. This 6% could be 3 or 4%. It's really going to depend on what our future is after these 2 years that we sign this agreement of what that future percent. That is just an estimate of what we think our insurance costs may be in the future. of an increase.
People aren't getting help with it.
You're right.
So
We
I,
do see,
yeah, I had to pick a number and put something in. So I tried to kind of pick a mid-range. I mean, I could put in 3% here and we can see what the numbers show. I can put in 10% here and see what it shows.
If we're that much of a risk now, how are we gonna get any better?
In the last 8 years, we have had years that were in the 80s.
Yeah.
when I got here, it was in the 80s. That was 3 years ago.
Teachers retire at 20 or 25 years.
Yeah, but it doesn't lower
That's
our
across
risk.
the board.
It doesn't lower our risk. We're talking about the
So-
insurance risk, right? So.
So as you're thinking about these, then just think, okay, let's go down one more percentage point if we have to add additional. Just
I
know
would
that,
increase it, keep it
no, I meant your fund balance.
Okay.
What's the average age of the employees?
Average, that's a great question.
We have to ask.
I'm gonna guess between 35 and 40.
Yeah.
Would be my guess if I.
Because of, yeah.
That's one of the factors that would go in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But if there's any scenario someone wants to see, if they want to see, hey, they think we're gonna have great years and we want to see 3% insurance, I can put it in. If they think we're gonna continue to have 120% loss ratio and we're gonna be up there again, I can put that in here. So, no problem putting any scenario you'd want to see. All right, so the next scenario I have is besides doing an insurance adjustment, we would ask our public to transfer 10 cents from debt service to operations. And we've consulted with Raymond James, our new bond underwriter, has looked at our Fund 3 and what we have to pay down our debt. And we would be able to move 10 cents over from Fund 3 to Fund 1 with approved vote from our voters. And so basically what that does is that's just saying, hey, we have this savings account, we have this Fund 3, we'd like you to authorize us to use it for operations in Fund 1, Fund 2. So what that does to our data, as you can see down here, it continues to help us. It really starts to flatten out our reserve ratio, and just staying with the concept of looking at FY28, you can see we're at 17%, and you can see that our budget deficits are really starting to come closer to zero. And so that 10 cents that we would move over would really help us with that. But of course, that has to be approved by the voters, 50% plus one, to be able to move that from Fund 3 to Fund 1.
And I sort of look at that as moving money from your savings account to your checking account in order to pay for things. And if you also look at 17%, and we're looking out to year 28, 17% fund balance is not bad. It is not. There are many schools that operate within that area, but that's where you just need to start weighing how much we're putting in capital and how it affects things and what money we have to operate.
Yeah. And our budget reserve right now is 26%, which is right near 25 that our auditor likes us to be at. We're in a great spot right now. And so I don't want anybody to think that this is the panic button. We just don't want to wake up one day and be like, okay, we're at 13%. Now we're starting to look at this. So we're looking at this way, way ahead of time and just trying to be proactive. So there's no panic here. We have reserves to have a couple, maybe rough years as far as funding goes, but we're just having this conversation now just to be proactive.
How much per year is this, for the maintenance of the capital maintenance, the chillers and all that stuff, so we don't have to do that again?
Sure. So what that does is that takes probably anywhere from 500,000 to 700,000 a year that I can reduce my Fund 4 expenditures and not have to transfer as much because we've taken care of all those projects with our bond savings.
Right, but how much is in there?
Right. So where you see that change, and that's a great question, is my transfer. So in the past, Ozark used to have a goal. We wanted to transfer $2 million from Fund 4 to Fund 1 every year. And so instead of that $2 million that we'd have to transfer, now we're looking at 1.2 million, 900,000, 800,000 that we'd have to transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 4 instead of 2 million or more. And so paying those Fund 4 items with the bond savings helps reduce this transfer. Now, if I have to transfer more because we haven't been able to take care of some of those things, then that's going to reduce what we have in Fund 1 and Fund 2, which is gonna lower our reserve ratio even more.
Okay, so we have less than $1 million this year there, but correct me if I'm wrong, in order to not have this situation in the future, we need to budget that, roofs, some of this other stuff, so that we don't, this year we need to spend this much on a roof. So what's the number
You're
that
correct.
we need per year, Curtis,
So
in
we're,
order to avoid this?
We're talking about Chromebooks and how that changes.
So we need 400 for buses, plus tech, plus we need to allocate something for roofs and all that stuff.
absolutely we do. But using the savings to take care of this one time, we'll be able to lower the amount I have to use. Yes, we need to keep money in there for buses, and we need to keep money in there for roofs. But we already need to do that and take care of the chillers, the water towers, and all that stuff, so that would increase it even more.
One of the
With Fund 4.
tech. So when we went 1-to-1, we said we're gonna put $1 million towards it. Every year. But we haven't hit that goal every year, but we've hit that goal. Now, the state has changed fund the capital projects money from $1,000 to $5,000. So some of those things like Chromebooks, teacher laptops, desktops that were paid for out of Fund 4, they can come out of Fund 1. So just that number dropping to 800,000 is scary, but know that a chunk of that, a good chunk of that is now can come out of Fund 1.
That 800,000 is not what we'd spend in Fund 4. That's what I have to transfer in Fund 1 and Fund 4 to keep our Fund 4 balance even. There's other revenues coming in Fund 4 that elevate our total budget for Fund 4. So 800,000 is not what we'd spend in our deferred maintenance. That is just what I have to transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 4 to keep our Fund 4 balance the same. If that makes sense.
So if you wanted, if you would say in 10 years, we're gonna have to re-roof this building, and we want it to come out of our capital account. Then instead of going out for a bond or lease purchase, then yes, we would have to start allocating more money to that. And you see it on this rotation or in the transfer, absolutely.
Would it be in the reserve fund?
That's not a reserve fund, right?
It would just be in the capital fund.
Yeah.
When it's Fund 4, yes. Yes.
Capital expense, very much really.
But people would need to know that that is building or that
Yes,
predicted expense. We're not just bogarting cash.
right.
Right.
It's coming, we're gonna spend it in a big lick.
It seems like that's the responsible way to look at this. We need to allocate 2.5 or whatever it is per year in order to not have we need a bond for a roof.
Well, it
But I
takes,
can tell
it
you,
takes a $2 million, you pay $2 million on, we make a little bit of money on it while we're saving it, as opposed to bonding it, taking a $2 million roof and turning it into a $3 million roof by the time you pay it off.
Yeah, we don't have a Fund 4 levy. And so any monies that come into Fund 4, it's either from a transfer or what I have in, like there's an MM surtax where we can put that in any fund, I put that in Fund 4. Then the classroom trust fund, the lottery money, our district can put up to 1.8 million in Fund 4. So we don't have a levy mechanism in Fund 4 right now. So we have to use the transfers and those things to get money in there to pay for not only the maintenance projects, but we have COP debt. So we have about $2 million that we have to pay every single year for COP debt. Like, well, what's COP debt? It's the debt that we use to pay for solar panels in South, some of our HVAC projects that we did in the last construction project, the Vasco building, and all those things. And so that's outside of our bond, that's COP debt, because that has to be paid out of bond.
I thought the solar panels were paying for themselves.
They do. So that money, so like this month, we saved that, we generated 6,000 worth of power at West and about 3,000 South. That money reduces the electrical bill. That money offsets the cost of the city for that portion. But there's other pieces with that too.
Yeah,
Right.
I just remember they guaranteed us.
Yeah, and they're that process is still constantly evaluated. And then also high school. There was a portion of high school that was done
For CREs.
so he could on here, he could, instead of transferring, and we have another document that you're more than welcome to see that shows what goes into capital and what's coming out of capital.
Ask that now if you'd like.
What do you
You
think?
want to get in the weeds on that, or?
Let's just keep going here
Okay.
first.
I guess my big thing is, I don't, whatever fund has to be in, as long as we're saying, hey, we have 2 million a year, whatever it costs to maintain this district, that we're allocating that, not saying, oh, shoot, now we need to figure something out, like Curtis had to do 6 years ago. So I mean, we don't want to have that case. And so the next time we go out for a bond, it's for school, it's for whatever, playgrounds and stuff that actually is improvements, not the existing things. You know what I mean?
Here's what happens, is you get a situation where the state cuts your funding or doesn't fully fund the formula, and you tell the teachers, we can't get raises this year, we can only hold the salary schedule. And you have people threatening to quit, threatening to leave, and then you'd be like, you know what, we're gonna push off our HVAC, we're gonna push off our buses, let's at least get $500 in the salary schedule to help. And that's those decisions that are made in the past everywhere across all school districts. They get people behind on their roofs and their HVACs and things, and it happens everywhere.
Well, no, I get that, but here we're just planning.
Sure, absolutely,
Planning is one thing, we can plan for success, but not,
absolutely.
and I get the next year, hey, here's what we do. Here was our plan, now let's modify that.
Right, exactly.
At least we can plan, I mean, this plan looks like failure in 5 years.
I got more plans coming.
No.
More plans coming.
But I will also say that once you put it into, and I know we're planning,
Yeah.
but once you put it into capital, you make that transfer, we can't transfer it back. It stays there. You cannot like, oh my gosh, we need, and that's that fine balance of how much you keep in your, the percentage of your reserves, and then how much you keep for your fund balance, and how much you keep in your capital. Because once it gets into Fund 4, but we've had three good years that we can transfer all this money. But then the state funding tanks, and we're gonna have a hard time paying our teachers. I've actually seen, and this is worst case scenario, that some districts have had to go get a loan to pay their teachers, so they've had to ask special permission, and this is when COVID hit, that they had to transfer money back. So I just want you to be aware that I agree, planning for this, but once you put it in that account, you can't switch it back.
And something too on that, we wait till the end of the year, so this transfer of 1.2, and I scroll back up, that transfer of 1.2, we don't do that at the beginning of the year and just be like, oh, well, we transferred it, it's there. We wait till the very end of the year, see how all our financials are at, and to look at what is the best strategic way of how much we should transfer over for the reasons Lori just mentioned.
I mean, maybe we don't put it in Fund 4, maybe it stays as a fund balance. I think that's why we're stay at 20 or above.
I think it's what you guys are saying, that you have to market it, or not market, you have to be very open. If our fund balance goes up, you're seeing 35%, and teachers will say, well, we need those in raises, you're not a bank, then we would say, but what are we, potentially, we have this money for roofs. I know, it's a fine balance. Keep going, Robert, sorry.
Sure. So the next scenario I have is, instead of transferring 10 cents, we're making the adjustment to insurance like we did all along, and we're gonna ask our community for a 30-cent levy increase. And so if we were able to do that, you can see in FY '28 that we are still above 20% and in a really good spot. And so, of course, you have to know your community and know if they have the tax tolerance for a 30-cent increase. And so that is something that, weighs on all boards across the state. I'm sure a lot of boards are talking about this. Hey, state decided not to go to 71.45. We have these things that we need to take care of, these needs for our kids. Do we want to ask our community? And that's just a scenario if you did that. So that's a hard one.
Can you explain the 10% that transfer?
Right.
That does?
Yeah, so the 10 cents is a no tax increase, tax rate increase, meaning that we would move 10 cents from debt service to operations, and we would lower our debt service by 10 cents, so we stayed at 4.14. If we did the 30 cents, we would go to, 4.44.
So you're
Which actually-
you're paying less on your debt is what it is. Is that-
Correct. In other words, we have the funding ability to still pay our debt and transfer 10
So you're
cents.
not paying less on your debt,
And we, yeah.
not accumulating money in that account,
Still paying your
you're
bills.
still paying.
Yeah, and we did an analysis with Raymond James to make sure that it's possible before you floated this idea.
It's kind of undoing, this happens every other year, right, in school districts across the state. It kind of undoes, during the assessment year, they lower the one levy so that, and raise the other one, so they can put the money over here. And then the next year, they they ask the voters, can we put that money back over there where we funded it originally?
So in the tax ballot or in the language for this, state statute mandates that you put that it would be a 10-cent increase
Mhm.
and the district will voluntarily decrease by 10 cents.
Right, which is
that-
the opposite of what happened.
So that keeps our levy flat at 4.14, which has been for 20 years.
Mhm.
And so the community does see that in there, and that for state statute, the language does have to read that.
Mhm.
So. All right, so this is the 30-cent levy, which would increase it to 4.44. And then our last one that we have here is everything.
Where would that put us?
Sure.
I know, this is 4.56, 4.5,
Right around there.
whatever it is.
Yep.
Right now, we're about middle of the road, and I'm thinking back 6, 8 months, comparatively speaking, Rogersville, Republic,
Right.
we were all in that range. Do you remember, what would that still put us below Nixa, but would put us above?
So if you give me about 30 seconds, I can log into the budget on the 10th of February, and I have a chart that shows our 8 local districts and where they're all at.
It's like 2 cents higher than Rogersville.
Okay.
Springfield's like right at 4. We're right close to about Rogers, or what you're saying. Nick's is the highest. And then Willard, Somerville, Branson's like 3 cents lower than us, but they get a lot of commercial money. A lot. And then some others are like 420s, 425s right in there. Like your Lebanons, your Willards, or some of those.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Willard, maybe going up this way.
So this last one is everything, 10-cent transfer, 30-cent levy, the insurance adjustment.
How'd you arrive at the 30 cents levy?
What was that, sorry?
How'd you arrive at the 30 cents being the?
Yeah, so with 30 cents, we are about $700 million in assessed valuation. So 30 cents gives us 2.1 million. So looking at the state, when they reduced their SAT, that took away 1.8. That 30 cents gives us just above that to continue to function, like we would have got that SAT increase. That's how we're arrived at 30 cents. So lots of different scenarios. And also, James, you mentioned like a 5A and a 5B. I also have those here to look at. Or I can change the data on here and make it real time here, either way.
Did those last two have the 7.5% insurance?
All of these here have the insurance adjustment.
Okay, so that's all the 7.5.
Yeah, and then the scenario where we just leave the 7.5 increase in there, the scenarios 5A and 5B you talked about,
7.5 across the board.
I have here, where we don't do the insurance adjustment, we just do the transfer and the levy and leave the insurance, we eat the insurance costs and keep it at 7.5%. So I have those as well, if you want to explore that option too.
I know you said you talked with the different groups, but do you really think the legislature's gonna go along with not raising it when they just passed it, saying that they would?
I'm just gonna base this off a Republican governor, Republican Senate, Republican House.
Cut the cost of that,
What?
I mean, we've cut the federal level, different policies.
I can't imagine that they really will. I mean, they. the
And don't get me
education
wrong,
lobby's a strong
it's-
lobby.
SAT was at 63.75 for years, so I'm ecstatic to get to go to 67.69.
Right, right.
I would have loved to go to 71.45. It looks like there's a 67.60.
When will that
I
be?
bet you they negotiate.
When will we
So-
do that?
Great question. So all this gets facilitated first week of May. The state has to pass their budget and it has to get approved. So we will know first week of May where they've been planning on all this. As with open enrollment and things like that might affect things. So first of May is that big time for school educators to say, okay, we're locked in, we know what they're gonna do. And then in June, I'll present the budget for next year, knowing, we're guessing right now, maybe they compromise and say 7,000 on SAT. I would be thrilled with that.
It would be nice if they had integrity, unfortunately.
Well, when people talk to them about it, I mean.
Oh, I'll remind you. I'll do my part.
So, but any scenarios that you would like to see, I know we talked about a lot, or any questions. I have a Fund 4 diagram that kind of shows the inflows and outflows of Fund 4 and where we, kind of derive what we need to transfer. that I'd be happy to show as well. I wanted to have something just in case, but I didn't want to get too in the weeds.
Do you need direction from us today on this? You don't, right?
We need direction from, because we need to start working on some of these projects. Yes.
So how do we match? I'm having a little bit of difficulty trying to translate what you're asking us for the bonds.
Sure. So that's a great question, Amber. All these scenarios that I have are the recommendations. We use bond savings for Fund 4. If we don't use bond savings for Fund 4, then I will need to adjust some of these numbers and increase what we transfer over to Fund 4 to pay for it.
See, that's what, like, as we decide that, it's almost like I need to see.
So, Amber, I think these things in the bottom, these chillers and stuff like that, this is relevant with
If you
550
don't do
plus
those, they're gonna be added.
Yeah.
So
Right.
can
That
you,
Plus
can
the
you do that?
transport.
But if we don't do those,
Sure.
if we do what you were suggesting, the other things are, like, where are they at?
Right.
Where's what at?
Like all the other things that we don't select. So if
If we don't do them, you go out to the bond for one of these days to do it.
Yeah.
Or you work it into your capital over the next few years.
Yeah, we don't have to do it today.
No, I'm just saying, like, there's people on every one of these that want it. And so, no matter what we select, someone's gonna be happy and someone's gonna be sad. So what are you gonna say to those people of what your plan is to get them what they need down the road?
And that's why we're having these discussions. So if you make this, then we've got to have a plan of, we're going to increase capital by this much, and we're gonna go out for a tax increase, and then 2 years from now, we're gonna look at a bond. That's why we're having these discussions.
That makes me,
To me, my thought is,
it makes me want to pick the things that they're not gonna be priority. And that sounds bad, but like, when are we going to get around to these things again?
So give an example.
The kids who were the sport, I mean, because obviously the sport will probably be last. So what are you gonna help? What are you
Well,
planning?
you're offsetting that potentially with doing the baseball field.
And one of the things we talked about in the baseball field, I believe it was Robert's idea, if you go to Central, like when they have districts at Central, is it baseball, softball field? Okay, but the markings are there, so
I
that
know.
if you have a bad weather
Yeah.
day, then you can do it. So you would cover both.
I just feel like that is a title, I mean, like, I feel like you're making one of them, we're gonna make it for baseball, but softball will adjust it so you can play your.
Title IX softball would have two though, because we would keep the existing, and they would then have the turf.
Oh, I guess that's true.
So when
See, that's smart, like, we gotta talk through that, because then that's not,
the thought process, that's right.
that's not the best use of our money, is there?
And when we were looking at this, it was, okay, so from a sports complex, oh my gosh, would that be such an amazing thing? But there are other realities that we need to take care of first.
Well,
And so the roofing, this allows us to redo the tennis courts. It allows baseball where we can host districts.
that way
This
it's-
also takes care of the playground at Tiger Hall, as well as taking care of our capital items. Those are just what we thought, looking at, okay, we're trying to give a little bit to as many people as we could.
I agree with that too. I also don't want to fix something and put that much money in something if the plan is eventually to have that complex, like how much time are you buying? Is that,
Yeah, and that's why we mentioned if you do something with the baseball field, you make it so in future use, they can have both baseball, softball. So then when you go up for your bond in 2026 to build a tennis, baseball, softball facility, now you have this practice field for freshman softball, freshman baseball, that's an ancillary field that we use for a lot of reasons.
that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
That's
So you're not putting good money after
But
bad.
you also have to understand when you're making those decisions, that if we have a baseball field here, and we have a softball field here, and we have this big sports complex, who's maintaining it? We're now maintaining this big one, we're maintaining 3, so it comes with the cost of custodial, with the cost of maintaining things. So that's something that you have to think about too. We would be adding more expenses if you do, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have this conversation. If we choose this, and then we still say we want a big sports complex, you just gotta realize that there's additional costs involved with that than just the facility.
And also,
And maybe that could be off the table. If we take care of these items, do we really need that?
And that would fix it, like, we're gonna be able to, like, that's gonna fix the baseball problem, these that are selected.
so as we looked at it in the past, the answer is yes, but that's pushing the baseball field out, moving the light, you gotta move the fence out to our property line just about, move the lights, level it, turf it, new dugout, or not new bleachers, and,
Locker room,
no, not the locker rooms, they have a locker room on there, yeah.
they count for that.
But we have a solution for that.
And then this would make tennis usable, we already discussed that, right?
Yes.
So like that, maybe that was there.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, well, baseball would build, right?
Well, with baseball, I don't know much about baseball, but if we're spending 1.8, shouldn't we look at the possibility of a new complex? I mean,
That's all right.
I don't know.
We're back and forth.
It seems like these numbers, yeah, it's higher, but.
So, do we know, like, who gave us these numbers on this?
So the turf number is, that's from multiple estimates over the last 3 years. That's Yancey's numbers, our numbers match up from who he's talked to and who we've had to look at it for the 1.2. The dollar sign, or the moving the lights, that's a solid estimate. The other one is, if we were to put money at it, how much do you think we should putting bleachers in? So that's just we want to do this much of improvements.
What things have to be done in order to make it usable for the district?
Yeah, it's none of it. So if we go and look at, and we can look at the old junior high, or the junior high football field, Common Field. When we moved and built that new stadium, again, coming back in 2018, those bleachers weren't touched. We had people falling through bleachers, stepping through it. So we came in and we redid all of the lumber in the bleachers. When you build something new, that becomes the focus. And you don't come back and fix the old. So if we take the complex off, it's off. But if we say we're gonna do it, at least we've created a baseball field that's not gonna cost us money going forward to come back and try to maintain it. Okay, now we're gonna try to come back and turf it, we're gonna try to move the fence, we're gonna try to do these other things. We've taken care of that up front. The maintenance on it is, yes, we'll have to replace that turf at some point, but that's the cost of doing business. So, well, from my experience, and I think Robert agreed with me on this one, if we build that new one without fixing the old, we're never gonna come back and fix the old. We have to fix the old first, then do the new. Or get a bulldozer and level it and nobody, two baseball fields is good, 2 softball fields is good. So,
I don't know if you saw federal government said that there's been $15 billion in vacant federal buildings that aren't being used. Same kind of thing. If we build that new sports complex on the hill and have the old tennis, the old softball, the old baseball, now we're trying to maintain the double. We either need to do something with it or bulldozer, like Kurt said, because trying to maintain.
Would the youth not utilize that? The youth right now has nowhere
They could, we would just have,
besides the new
they
facility.
could, we just have to know that we're gonna bear the cost of that maintenance and upkeep.
So, that's a lot. I've got Lori out there waiting to come in. So I guess we will not make decisions today. Is there something from our aspect that we need? We know we're moving forward with the roof.
Can we finish it this afternoon, or, can we squeeze it back in so we can?
We can
We
potentially
talked about it back in October.
From 2:30 to 3. That we can come back. I think one board member may not be here at that time, right?
I thought we were going to force it, that bothered me.
No, because we've got strategic planning for it.
Right.
I guess, I'm good with everything else. My only thing is the baseball field stuff. Is that what the baseball people really want? Is that what, do you guys want us to redo this, or would it be better to put that money towards the sports complex? I don't know the answer to that. That would be nice to know before we
Was that, so the roof has already been decided, right? Is there anybody that doesn't think you should do the chiller at the middle school, the chiller at East,
Right.
and then the cooling tower?
Yeah, I think-
You don't have to decide all of it right now,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
so if nobody disputes those, all the stuff on the baseball field, you can figure that out later, but let's start these things that we know we're gonna do, and those sound like critical repairs or replacements that need to happen.
So the top three at the bottom, but not, maybe not the bottom two.
The middle school chiller, the east chiller, the north cooling tower. If
Yeah.
if that has to happen, we all agree on that, then
Right,
why delay that while we figure out who's gonna rest of the money?
good.
Would be my thought. I think that's helpful.
Do with that.
So we're talking about the top two items of priority one, priority two. That coming out of bond money. That's where I have a problem.
I understand.
That's,
why I'm trying to.
it says right here, constructing, improving, repairing, renovating.
It's not that it can't be done, he just said like.
Oh, we already did a whole bunch of storm shelters, and indoor practice things, and we expanded the Tiger Claw cafeteria, there's a lot of new things.
So can we table this till 2:30 and then come back? We'll table it, so we need to get her going. And this also gives you time to think about it. Like he said, it would have been great for us that we knew exactly what was going on and we could move on. But I agree, let's get the top 3 or 4 that we're going to do, and then we move on.
It's not that I don't want them to be done. My view is how you pay.
Okay. Take a break for a minute while she comes in.
Covered.